New numbers out about Americans' confidence, but I think worldwide confidence in television news, newspapers, journalism has fallen to all-time lows. This is actually really, really stunning. Like, think about how sad this is that you cannot trust journalism anymore. You can't trust your mainstream media. You can't trust your newspaper of record. You can't trust the New York Times. You can't trust USA Today. They're all rags. They're all run by millionaire corporations, right? That all have an agenda. That their journalists are under a roof that tells them what to do, what to cover, where to go. As Noam Chomsky points out, like if you work for an organization like this, you might think you're free and independent, but at the end of the day, you have an agenda to answer for.
So
And
the numbers
absolutely.
are absolutely shocking. Just 16% of U.S. adults say they have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in newspapers. Newspapers are rated just a tiny bit higher
Yeah, look at
than
this chart.
TV news. So if you look at the chart, 11% say that they trust TV news, and 16% say they trust newspapers. If you look at around the middle aughts, right, between about 2000 to 2012, newspapers and television were tracking the same. I think that's pretty interesting. In the early 90s, television was tracking much higher than newspapers. I wonder why that is. Why was TV news getting such high ratings back in the 90s? But these numbers are not very good. They don't seem to be on track to recover at all, especially when given the track record of the media in recent years around, let's see, COVID, Hunter Biden, the war in Ukraine. What else? Can you think of any other reason that the media has earned its chops?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, think about all of the ways in which they've lied to us. They've been called out. They've been caught red-handed. I mean, just look at the New York Times. Just look at the Associated Press, Reuters. The stories about fabrications and first of all, I think also Americans are now. When you watch this show, we try to shine a light on these stories. We try to shine a light on the fact that most of the American media are run by the intelligence state, right? They literally have people who feed them information from the intelligence communities
Yes.
inside the government. This is the same thing in the BBC. This is the same thing in the UK. This is the same thing in other countries, right? But the United States particularly, they get these information from intelligence sources. Intelligence sources say. Right. And so that's where CNN and all of these big media corporations, they run with these stories on a regular basis that come right out of the intelligence state. Stories planted. It's amazing. And we saw it unbelievably in Ukraine, right, where these stories would suddenly pop up and they appeared all over the mainstream media. They were in the Associated Press and suddenly they were on CNN, they were on BBC. Within like minutes, these stories would be front page stories about maternity ward being attacked.
Yes.
And, what was another one? Another one was like the mayor of Mariupol.
That bomber, the
The
ghost
ghost.
The
pilot
ghost
or
of
whatever.
Kiev. Yeah, the ghost of Kiev.
Kiev.
Yeah. Like he's, those
Snake
stories.
Island.
Snake Island, all of these things, like suddenly. But to me, like the one that really stuck out to me was sort of in the past like month, which was like the mayor of Mariupol, who anyone who was like studying that city and who knew that he had long fled. Like he's not there. And like Ukrainian sources weren't there anymore. They were gone because Russia had invaded that area and taken it over. And so the mayor says that over 200 bodies are found in the basement of this building. Mayor says the mayor wasn't there. These sources aren't there. There's people aren't there. And then the Associated Press ran with the story. All of these major media outlets just run with the story. And then you start to unpack it and you realize, wow, this is garbage. They're not accurate in this at all. The reporting is way off, and these people aren't there, and no one questions the sources, right? It's the Mark Twain quote, right? Like truth, a lie can make it all the way around the world before truth has a chance to put on its pants. That's the case.
Yes. Can we put the poll back up? Now, I find myself somebody who is in the plummeting category, right? Clayton and I worked for the mainstream media from, let's say 2000, this 2002 part. I graduated from college in 2000. up until around 2017. And I want to say that my personal trust in the media tracks right along this Gallup poll. So it was relatively high when I, joined right out of college, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. As I continued my career, it plummeted slowly, but not precipitously. And then in recent years, I feel like since leaving the media, everything that I read, I have to find a separate source for, if it's especially if it comes from a mainstream publication. So, I want to check myself because I'm like, is it just because I left the media and I have my personal feelings about it, or is this a collective? This shows me that this is a collective.
Yeah. And I should say, so if you look at that chart again, 1994, 1996, you can see that that's when, Fox News. So at that point, you had CNN, right, for 24-hour cable, right? You had the war in Iraq. So you have trust in television media when they start tracking this stuff, right? Gulf War, 91, 92, like Gulf War, like CNN,
Yes.
like we're covering the truth, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the economy tanks. The economy wasn't very good then. You have Bill Clinton, 1992 there. So you had just very kind of copacetic sort of liberal media, Bill Clinton, and then, you just see this dramatic decline. Again, I think the problem is that so many people don't know where to turn. I mean, thankfully, we have this show. We try to cover the stories you're not going to see in the mainstream media. We cover stories that were not run by billionaire corporations, so we're going to give you the alternative take on these stories without an agenda. But all of these people that work for these companies, you've seen recently the Washington Post with the Taylor Lorenz story, going after, literally, going to people's homes and targeting them in these stories. What else? I mean, the list is pretty endless, actually.
Yes. When you break this down by partisan, though, Republicans are far less likely to have a confidence in their newspapers, at least. 5% of Republicans have trust in just newspapers. 35% of Democrats. You see a spike in Democratic trust of the media right as Trump takes office, right around 2017 through 2018, 2019. And then around 2020, even Democrats start to lose their trust in the media. Now, I do feel like the narrative around that is that as Trump started screaming fake news, Democrats started to have this backlash, like, it's not fake. It's just news you don't like. We're just calling you out, right? And so Democrats sort of hung on tighter to the media around that time as a sort of comforting way to take the Trump administration. But even now, now that Democrats are in office, COVID has hit, plus all of these other sort of hits that we've just been listing, are even eroding confidence in the Democratic Party as well.
Yeah, I mean, Americans have expressed confidence in newspapers only once, 1979. That's it. When 51% at the time did. That's the highest. I think it's just staggering to think about televisions and newspapers. You can't really find, I mean, where are you getting a newspaper that you feel like is really going to give you the real story? I mean, can you think of one? Can anyone here name a newspaper, a printed newspaper that you're going to buy? I mean, if you
I hate to be like, she's just like my mother. She's never satisfied. But I can't think of one media outlet that I love that has not let me down in recent years. Things that I endear to, that I'm like, this is how we're covering this? You're not asking questions about this? Mm-hmm. What about this? I can't think of one.
Yeah, I mean, you would think we grew up you grew up watching 60 Minutes. You thought oh, this is a bastion of journalism until they, then they're caught lying. What else? I mean, 2020.
Even the Atlantic yesterday. I cried some tears in my, in my coffee yesterday over this. This, next round of inoculations is coming out, and it won't have any rock solid data. But we think that Americans should no rock solid data, only based on mice, and we think that's okay. These are the kind of things that no questions asked, just
or who owns these companies, right? So you might read Politico and you're like, oh, I'm getting my political news that's owned by a German company, like about American politics. Like, okay. And you start like just peeling the onion back on all of this. Vox Media. Oh, I'm going to get my information from Vox Media. Who owns Vox
Well, do you
Media?
remember back-
You know?
You remember back in the day, like when Walter Cronkite and Ted Koppel and those like Nightline and stuff, like there was a little bit of news and then the channel went dead after so long. There wasn't this 24-hour news cycle. And you felt like you were getting real news, and it was never like an opinion thing like we have now. Like if you watch, Hannity or any of these guys, it's just like it's all their opinion. But like we had people who sat down, they reported the news as it was happening, and then the news was over. And it just felt like we were more informed. But now it's like you're not informed. You're taking somebody else's opinion and trying to make it your own. You're not getting an opinion on facts. You're getting an opinion on somebody else's opinion on those facts.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, like Nightline, like Ted Koppel starting Nightline was in a response to the Iranian hostage situation, right? And it was like 30 minutes after, on ABC at the time, like they didn't have anything else, and it was like 30-minute coverage of that. And then, of course, it became Nightline and continued. Then it just grew and grew and grew. Then you have 24-hour cable, and you need to fill all of that time repeatedly. So anyway, it's stunning to see this. I'm not surprised by this. It's really sad, though. And that's why people turn to independent media. I mean, that's why we have a show, right? That's why we are journalists. We spent 20 years, though, in the mainstream media. So I understand how it works. Like my son asked me today, he said, Daddy, how do you synthesize, go through all of this information before you do a show? And I said, well, I start with sort of a blank canvas, and I think about the stories that I know how the mainstream media is going to cover them, and I want to look at the other side of those stories. And that's kind of where we start. We kind of go through, and then we cover 5 or 6 stories on the show. I guarantee you flip on the mainstream media, you're not going to see almost any of the stories we cover here.
Yes.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.